welcome to Table Tennis Philosophy. Today we're going to talk about the Block Back Better plan, which, unlike the Build Back Better plan, will have absolutely no effect on inflation or the economy at all. In fact, that's just a play on words. Sorry. Bad joke, but what we're doing is talking about blocking, the underrated shot that absolutely can change your game. And surprisingly, at least to me, a lot of players don't block very well or don't block at all. And other players build their entire game around blocking. Perhaps you're a long pips, backhand, chop blocker, and you continue to block consistently or hope to until you can get a good forehand shot in. And a lot of other players who would look like they might play kind of a conventional game, might use smooth rubber on both sides, end up blocking a whole lot. And I'm going to address a couple issues with blocking. And the first is your racket suitable for blocking? And the answer is, yeah. I don't care what kind of racket you have. In fact, I used to be somewhat of the belief that thinner sponge would help you block better, but that may not always be the case. It really depends on your competition. If you are playing players who don't have super strong shots, those blocks with the thinner sponge might be helpful, but on the really strong shots, and if you're playing at a higher level, thinner sponge probably isn't really going to help. It would make a certain amount of sense that having some sponge will cushion it. And in fact, what I usually tell people, the basics of, let's say, a backhand block, and this could apply to a forehand as well, is get your racket in the path of the ball, loosen your grip, possibly even pull back on that strong shot, get the racket angle right, and just try to redirect the ball back at your opponent. And you're not trying to add anything to it, particularly on the stronger shots. Now, if they make a weaker shot, it's possible to make kind of a punch block. There's a number of different possibilities of that, and pretty much all these apply to the forehand as well, although people tend to block more with their backhand. In fact, I would say a backhand block is an absolutely mandatory shot for most players. You really need to have that. The surprising thing to me is that some players absolutely don't block at all. They're always trying to go forward. And this is true for a lot of beginner players who have learned the right strokes, and the idea of blocking and redirecting, using the person's energy against them, is not something that comes naturally to them. This is also a problem for more advanced players who want to get their forehand loop, their backhand loop, their stronger shots into play. But you have to figure, if you've got two players and they're both playing offense, at some point you're going to need to be able to redirect that energy back, keep the ball on the table, and your only real option other than that, or the most obvious one, is to back off the table. If you play close to the table, you're absolutely going to have to be able to block. I would say that even back from the table, you're going to need it at times. This is one of my main shots that I use, and for whatever reason, blocking comes fairly naturally to me. And I do think it has a lot to do with your personality, your approach to the game, and it's, like I said, blocking is a super underrated shot, and you want to look at your game, evaluate it, and figure out what part, that blocking should have in it. It depends a lot on your style of play. I'll give you an example. I have one player who, close to the table, hits with short pips, and blocks and hits, pushes on the backhand side. The problem is, for her style of game, she's looking at either pushing, blocking, hitting, or making a rolling shot and a little bit of a backhand loop. But it's mostly blocks, hits, rolls, pushes. Okay. At that level, you're going to need all of those shots. In fact, whatever level you're playing at, you need all those shots. But the problem is, right now, the hit has become the primary shot, and not using blocks near enough. The problem with trying to hit everything, particularly with short pips like that, is if the ball is below the level of the net, you can't really hit that. You're going to have to roll that. And when people make strong shots, you're going to need to block. So of those shots, hit needs to be kind of the second or later on in the cycle, unless somebody gives you something that can easily be hit, easily attacked. Obviously go for those, but the progression quite often would be something like a push, roll, block, hit, or push, roll, hit, perhaps roll, block, 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 hit. Those are all possibilities for that style of game where you're using pips. But the point is, what you kind of get the idea is, somewhere in your style of game, you've got to have the ability to block, and it can't be 100% offense 100% of the time. Even the most, biggest attacking players are going to occasionally need a block. And I would say, for most of the people listening to this video, if you're not a pro and would know how to block or would know how to stay on offense most of the time, you may need the block much more than the professionals do. So just keep it in mind. Blocking is an underrated shot. If you can block well, your entire game will look a whole lot better. So keep it in mind. Appreciate your comments, and see you next time. Thanks.